Okay, no problem. No, it's on it. It's on it. It's 30.
Early, just in case. Like hotspot? You got that on your phone if you have Apple.
Maybe it's just the map.
Oh, you got a prepaid Apple? Oh, yeah, no, they got that, like Verizon. I don't know if they do prepaid hotspots, but I use mine. I don't ever trust anybody's network, so I use mine.
Really, I love
Keep
it.
an encrypted connection. I don't trust nobody else's.
Yeah, the legislature might.
For Renee.
Majority vote.
That's a big gun.
We couldn't pass anything in a month. They're too busy fighting with each other all the time. And that's when some want to be included for corruption and bribery. Did you have
Anyway.
tomorrow there. So I'm retyping it. Because I don't even think I have that.
Really, I'm the only one. Okay, you don't like it?
It's good, good to check. Yeah, just for the last.
I'm leaving it.
Everything set for today.
Did you turn all the mics on? Okay.
Her name.
Originally just gonna skim it.
Nina. What's her name?
Okay, we're going to get started here in about a minute.
Words called
I know.
now.
So everybody check their cell phones and make sure they're off or on the silent mode.
Thank you for that, because mine is not.
What's her name? The girl.
Debbie Schaefer.
Game time.
I couldn't even think of a Schaefer. She used to have that.
I knew that. No, and I have 30 quotes that have to be done. Nope.
Okay, it's 6 o'clock. Today is Tuesday, September 7th, 2021. This is Barberton City Council. Tonight is a committee of the whole meeting. Before that, we will do our individual committees. And the first committee to start off will be Mr. Greer with Streets, Sidewalks, and Lighting.
Thank you, Mr. President. Good evening, everybody. I'd like to bring to order Street, Sidewalk, and Lighting. Today is September 7th, 2021. It is 5:59, or 6 o'clock, 6 p.m., and we are in the council chambers. All committee members are present, along with other council members and guests noted on my sheet. For topics of discussion today, we have one request for legislation. This request from legislation is from Mr. Tracy, requesting legislation to enter into contract with Akron Tractor and Equipment in the amount of $88,245.99 for the purchase of a New Holland Workmaster 95 cab tractor with an Alamo RM 180 rear-mounted boom mower. Mr. Tracy is requesting emergency wording with one reading, as the prices will increase at the end of September. Mr. Tracy, in an email today to, I believe, all of council, stated that their current tractor with boom mower is from 1999, making it over 20 years old. And the current tractor will be used as a backup tractor for property maintenance when they get the new mower. This mower will be used across multiple departments, including the streets, parks, water, sewer, and stormwater. And it will be used for mowing back banks and trimming back shrubbery and alongside roadsides, WTPs, WWTP, stormwater, retention ponds, vacant properties, and etc. Well, Mr. Tracy, could you provide any more information as to the current state of our current tractor, why we need another one with, other than the exception of it being old?
Yeah, so the current model that we're using is 22 years old. There are some wiring issues that with the track down, which kind of make it questionable when you're driving in on the road from destination to destination. So the tractor can be utilized in a safer manner if we use it on vacant properties or parks or something where it's not in traffic with motorists. So we feel that given its age and some of the questionability for its integrity, that this new unit will also have a cab that will allow it to be used during inclement weather, and also will keep the operator safer. When you're using a boom mower, there's a lot of flying objects. There's also just the issue of driving down the street with an open cab on it. There's also safety from sun exposure, weather exposure, extreme temperatures. So it can be used for a number of things with the cab on it. The boom mower itself, that's actually broken in half a number of times through all the years of use, and it's probably had been welded. I talked to mechanics well over 20 times in different spots, so it's definitely past its useful life. The useful life for something like that is around 5 years. The tractor itself is probably 10 years, so we've definitely made good use of that equipment over time.
With this being $88,000 and being used across multiple departments, is this accounted for in a budget? And if it is, what budgets?
It's in 4 budgets. It's in streets, stormwater, wastewater. It'll come out of streets, stormwater, sewer, and water.
And it was,
It'll be used in all those different.
was this budgeted in last year's budget, or is this gonna? Okay. All right. Is there any questions from the committee members? Any questions from council and gallery? Hearing none and seeing none. Do I have a motion to call for this piece of legislation? Motion made by Mrs. Angeloff and seconded by Mrs. Fry. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Motion carries. For miscellaneous discussion, this probably will be a little lengthy, but as you know, there's a lot of projects going on in the city of Barberton, a lot of road projects that seem to have, or that are going on, a lot of concrete work. So I reached out to Mr. Tracy today just to see if he could provide us an in-depth update on where we're at with all of this construction and what we should expect here in the coming weeks. So, Mr. Tracy, could you give us an update on the 2021 road program?
Sure. So right now, as far as the residential road program goes for 2021, Pear and Asphalt is still completing the concrete portion of the project. There's also some asphalt involved in that, but really this is all the prep work that has to be done before the milling and paving takes place. About 90% of the concrete is completed. That's work that includes like ADA ramps, sidewalks, curbs, and aprons. They'll probably do some casting adjustments before the surface course as well. After they complete all those, they'll start moving into the paving process, the milling and paving. So they're not going to be here this week, I don't believe. I expect them to start that process probably next week, and that's when we'll start seeing big differences throughout the city with the road program. As far as the chip seal portion of the program, that part is completed except for the fog seal. They'll let the stone knit into the emulsion for 3 to 4 weeks, and they'll come back and tie that all together with the fog seal. The MF projects for the year, so we're talking Worcester Road North, North Avenue, 2nd Street Southwest. Those are in a similar stage as the road program. They're doing prep work, concrete work, which is a lot of the same work, ADA ramps, sidewalks, curbing, catch basin adjustments. The intermediate course, of course, on that project is already down. The milling has been done. Just waiting on them to complete those concrete repairs, and then we will be doing the surface course installation following that. I'm not sure of the timeline of that one as well, but I think it's going to be probably near the end of the month before they start doing the paving. Moving on to the 5th Street 619 project that is being done in collaboration with I-76. Real and subcontractor Shelley and Sands is their large contractor. They work all over the state. All over the state is different weather. I was told they're getting held up by weather in different areas, and it pushed them back. I think originally I had said something like the end of August is what we were thinking for the surface course to go on 5th Street, and now that's pushed back to my email from the foreman of Ruland said probably at least mid-September. But it's, it's not forgotten. I know a lot of people have seen 5th Street and can't believe that that's the end product, and that's not the end product. So it's still coming.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Tracy. Yeah, I've been receiving, I'm sure we probably all receiving a lot of calls about roads half done and wondering. So just to clarify, there is no like scheduled date that we can, other than just a couple weeks for residents on side roads?
Correct, yeah.
Okay. Mr. Bevick?
Thank you. Is there, Mr. Tracy, is there a hard and fast date that they have to be completed by virtue of their contract?
Yes, October 31st.
Thank you.
And that would be all the contractual work included and our punch list that already gone through and taken care of. It's been a difficult year for a lot of the contractors just because they're doing, a lot of the contractors are doing twice the amount of work because a lot of people didn't do work last year, and they're just cramming things in this year. They're jumping all over the place. It kind of seems that way with every contractor that we work with so far this year. And talking to industry colleagues, it seems to be happening in a lot of other municipalities as well.
Mrs. Bevick?
Thanks. An afterthought. Is there some sort of penalty after October 31st? I know sometimes in construction, there's a penalty by day if you aren't complete.
So there is some penalties, built into the contract, some liquidated damages, but they're pretty expensive. A lot of times that, we works out, make it negotiated or something, but I don't foresee us having an issue.
All right. Is there any other questions from the committee or council about the 2021 road project or any of the road work here going on in the city of Barberton? All right. Well, seeing none, is there any questions from the gallery on roads? All right. Seeing none, do I have a motion to adjourn? Motion made by Mrs. Angelo and seconded by Mrs. Fry. Street sidewalk and lighting is now adjourned at 6:09 p.m.
Okay, thank you. Next up is Environmental Health and Social Services with Mr. Jaber.
Thank you, Mr. President. Environmental Health and Social Services, meeting September 7th, 2021, 6:10, council chambers. All members present. Other council members also noted. We have two new requests for legislation. The first one is a letter from Mayor William Judge requesting a reappointment confirmation of Terrell Fletcher to the Board of Health. His reappointment would commence on January 1st, 2022 and end on December 31st, 2026. Any remarks? Ready?
Do we have a resume for that?
I do have myself a resume.
You have it?
If you want, I can have a.
I don't know if I ever looked at it. Did other city council members receive?
No, I didn't receive anything.
Ms. Heidi?
Thank you, Chair. Mr. Mayor, is this term expiring this year?
Correct.
Okay. Mr. Chairman, with all due respect, according to Rule 305B of the council rules, we can't consider any appointments in an expiring term until October. So October 4th in the Health Committee meeting would be the time this would have to be brought up.
Well, so you're going to have a few of them coming. I thought that the deadline was to have them to council by October, not that they could come before October. Understanding?
305B timeliness says council shall consider appointments to all vacancies to boards and commission in October of the expiring year of said vacancies.
Okay. So I can submit them, you just can't vote on them.
Correct.
Okay. So you've got a few of them in different committees. We want to reach out because some, it's difficult to get the information back. There's a few throughout the various committees, so I guess just hold on to them until then.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Mayor.
Thank you. Good on time. Ms. Crowley,
Can we
right?
get, I don't have any, if we have some in other committees, I don't have any resumes. Is there any way that we can get those? I was under the impression that we were all supposed to receive those.
Ms. Price?
Everything's been turned over to the council clerk, so she-
Okay, thank you.
So we will not be voting on this tonight?
Oh,
Good. All right.
we,
And Chairman?
Yes, sir.
Once again, Rule 305A, appointments to board and commissions, resume. All of council shall be provided the completed City of Barberton's Board and Commissions questionnaire as designed by the City of Barberton official website for any appointment to a vacancy on board or commission. So yes, we all do need copies of it.
Resumes. Ms. Price, if you don't mind. Thank you. I appreciate it.
well, I got ones for this one,
Probably because you're on the health committee.
for planning.
Oh,
Thank you, Mr. Heidig. All right, any more remarks on this one? Okay. E, a letter from Sean, like me, Rocky J. requesting resolution for Kobe Fair Jr. This resolution. I'm requesting a resolution for Kobe Fair Jr. The alumni of Barberton High School, graduated in 2012. As a pro MMA fighter, Kobe has an impressive amount of accomplishments, included being a two-time Ohio State qualifier, Barberton High School, 2011 gold medalist and junior Olympian, 2012 district champ, and two-time All-American award at Notre Dame College. He'll also be making his pro debut on the UFC Fight Pass on October 17th. Any remarks?
Chairman?
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Chair. If anybody on this council doesn't know too much about MMA and UFC, to make it to the stage he's about to undertake is a huge accomplishment of dedication and just absolute training to the art. So it is a very high honor for him. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Roddick. Anybody else? Council? Audience? All right, we'll do a motion first.
I'll make that motion.
Mr. Hardy? Need a second?
Second.
Need a second, Mr. Griffin? All right, and we'll vote.
Aye.
Aye.
And it passed. Thank you. All right, and we'll open this up for miscellaneous discussion. Health Committee? All right, I'll bring up something. Everybody knows the numbers are going up for COVID. If you have any kind of updates, Mr. Mayor, on any updates on COVID numbers?
Yeah, as you've seen in the news, they've been going up quite a bit throughout the country. So I was up here a little earlier talking to Mr. Regis and Lori about what the city of Akron's doing, but it's a little different. They're going virtual with all their meetings, but that's in their charter. So the state has not changed their stance on going virtual, but I have reached out to IT about making sure everything is ready to go at the active adult center. These council and everyone in this room is spread out quite a bit. I don't believe that the state is going to make any changes on virtual meetings. It will all stay in person. That's the word I'm getting now. But at least we can be a little safer, and if need be, move out to the active adult center. So at least people will be spread out. So, but it looks like we're trending in the wrong direction. Actually, so.
And will we open the public, you think, again, or we go to the?
If we go to the active adult center, we have to be open to the public. But we're still going to down there.
Thank you.
That decision has not been made. We're just getting
Chairman?
Mr. Hardy?
Thank you, Chair. Mr. Mayor, you said that it's in Akron's charter. Director Miller, would that have to be in a charter, or can that be in the council rules if there's, let's say, a doomsday scenario to go virtual?
Yeah, it's state law that you can't, the reprieve of allowing non-attendance at a public meeting by voting members was in state law that was enacted. So state law has gone back to what it is pre-pandemic. And so that must be live participation and in-person attendance. So the only way that can be changed is if your charter says something different than state law. So communities who chose to do that amended their charters during the interim.
Thank you.
And let me clarify, I don't know for sure that they changed their charter, I don't pay attention to their council all that closely. I'm assuming that it's in their charter.
Yeah, I was just curious if it had to be a charter issue or if it could be in a council rule.
It has to be the charter issue.
Okay, thank you. That's all I have, Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Heide. All right, any miscellaneous discussion? All right, hearing none, motion to adjourn, please.
I'll second that.
Griffin.
It's over there.
And we are adjourned at 6:17. With that, I pass, sir.
Thank you.
Did you get this? Because I got two of them.
I think so.
Or you told me. Okay.
Okay. Next up is planning, annexation, and codes with Mrs. Angela.
Thank you, Mr. President. First of all, I want to congratulate Mr. Heide on his marriage today.
Thank you very
My
much.
husband and I, we just have 50 years this year, so good luck.
Thank you much. And each member here and the administration each have a little gift there, so they want to take them home, or?
Classes up the conference tables. I kinda like that.
I know Director Tracy said he doesn't exactly have the green thumb at home, so it's okay.
Not me and my wife.
But congratulations.
Thank you very much.
I would like to bring to order the Planning, Annexation, and Codes Committee. It is Tuesday, September 7th, and it is 6:15, and we're all in our colorful council chambers. All the members are present, all council members are present, and guests as noted on my sheet. Topics of discussion. I have some legislation requests. The first one is a letter from Trevor Hunt requesting legislation to rezone the property on Norton Avenue, partial 01-15727, 01-13934, 01-13935, 01-02305, to be rezoned from C3, Community Center Commercial, to I2, Medium Industrial, and partial 01-11042 to be rezoned from RT40, 2 family, to I2, Medium Industrial. The Planning Commission met and is recommending council's approval to rezone these properties. The 4 properties on the north side, which is known as 673, 671, and 657 Norton Avenue, makes up 3.91 acres of land. And the one across the street on the south side is 666 Norton Avenue, and that's 6.32 acres. The properties on the north side consist of Wintro Construction and Coles Storage and Francois. The use on the south side of Norton Avenue is the former Armory building that Stark State leases from the Barberton Community Foundation. And like I said, the Planning Commission met and recommends this rezoning to Barberton City Council. Are there any questions from the committee?
No, not for me.
Any questions from the body of council? No, this will go 3 readings because it's zoning. Any from the gallery?
Just a comment, this is Angel.
Yes.
Just a comment.
Mr. Davis.
One of those properties was owned, is still owned by the Coles family.
Uh-huh.
But Cole, Senior, the older gentleman, the owner, he passed away while we were on vacation.
Yes, I know, Mr. Hoover.
So
Mhm.
he was a very well-loved man in the community.
Yeah,
and,
I think this property's in his son's name.
His son's name,
Yeah.
correct.
Mhm. Yes,
Well,
yes. Okay.
I'll make a motion that we call for this.
All right, Mrs. Copeland first.
And I'll second.
Mr. Greer. All in in favor?
Aye.
Motion carried. All right, the second legislation request, the letter from Trevor Hunt requesting legislation to rezone the property on George Street. Purposes that, the
Proposes.
parcel numbers are 01-08642, 01-08632, 01-08624, and 01-08631, to be rezoned from RS40, single-family detached, to RM18, residential multifamily. The Planning Commission is not recommending council's approval to rezone these properties. The existing building on George Street, 311 George Street, that piece of property, they want to build 2 one-bedroom, single-story units. And on the other piece, 303 George Street, they want to build 4 three-bedroom, 2-story units. And part of that, there's several empty lots that they're going to make a parking lot. We did have a resident that came in and voiced her opinion. She is at 319 George, and her property's set back. And she has nothing but problems with people parking in her front yard, tearing up her shrubs and trees and everything that she's tried to make her place look good. The reason Planning Commission has for the denial is because it's spot rezoning and does not fit in with the neighborhood, because these will be rentals. Do I have any questions from anybody on the committee? Oh, gosh. Anybody from council? Any questions? From the gallery?
Just a comment,
Yes.
Chair, I believe that across the street from this location, some single-family homes are being planned right now as well.
And those aren't rentals.
Correct.
Those will be bought.
All right.
Do I have a
Sure.
motion to call for this?
Yeah.
Wait.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Taylor has a
Mrs.
question.
I did want to clarify, as far as planning commission not recommending this, it's not so much for the plans that the owner has for that, it's that the zoning that he's wanting doesn't fit with what he wants to do with it. So, I've seen the plans, and to me, it seems like a good idea, and I think putting something there would also help the neighborhood it would stop from having people parking there and causing trouble, because people will be living there, you know what I mean? So I think that'll help the issue. But again, it's not so much with what he wants to put there, it's what he chose to zone it as. So he's planning on coming back and submitting a different proposal for that.
Thank you. Mrs. Thompson is on the planning commission, so thank you for that. Mr. Best, too. And like I said, it is rentals, and there's quite a few rentals there, and there are some new homes that are going to be bought, and so it just doesn't fit in that neighborhood as of right now. But we'll see his plans when he comes back in September, October, when he does the plans.
Mrs. Miller has her hand up.
I would imagine the issue for the planning commission was not a rental issue, but whether it was a multifamily unit issue.
It was a zoning
Right.
issue, yes.
Yes,
Yes,
that's a
it is
single
zoning.
family issue. So if it was a multifamily building, that would not fit into the existing zoning of the neighborhood.
Correct.
So if he chose to build single-family homes in the neighborhood, whether they are owner-occupied or rental, is irrelevant to zoning. So his proposal to build multifamily in a single-family neighborhood is the issue at hand.
Okay, right. So if we don't agree with changing it, we don't bring it out of committee,
No, it
is
has
that?
to come out of
The
committee.
planning commission denied the zoning because it was multifamily zoning in a single-family zoning area.
Okay,
So you agree with the planning commission?
I agree with the planning commission.
But it still has to go on council. We still have to have legislation for that. And that,
And then we'll pull it back to you guys.
yes. That would still, it has to come, because it's zoning. He's changing the zoning, so it has to come to us, even though it was denied by.
Okay, but
That would be your vote of legislation. when it's
Okay,
passed.
so
Yes.
I'll call for this
Yes,
legislation.
yes. Oh, Mr. Heidi?
Oh, that was just my question. If there was enough dissent, would we even have to pull it out of committee? I mean, I'm not on the committee, so I say we, but if there was enough dissent, does it have to go in front of the body, or can it just die in committee?
Mrs. Miller?
No, it has to be.
Has to go on council.
Okay.
Okay.
Yes, it has
I'll-
to have a legislation that it was being, that we voted no or yes on that.
Okay.
Have a motion.
I'll make a motion. Needed to understand it.
And I'll second.
Mr. Greer, all in favor?
Aye.
Okay, and this, again, will be 3 readings.
And then at vote time is when we,
Yes.
okay, thank you. That's-
Okay, the next thing I have is a letter from Mr. Thomas Heidi, Councilperson at Large, requesting legislation to amend ordinance 53-2012 and/or Charter 836.04B, amusement devices, skill-based amusement machines and arcades, license fee, transfer, and display, to add language at the end to say, no new licenses shall be issued effective upon date passed. He's asking for 3 readings with no emergency request. Before I get started with this, I got a call from Mr. Heidick back early August, and he was all excited, and he was going to, talk to Mrs. Miller, and they were going to see what could be done. Apparently, and I don't know this, I have not talked to Chief Morburn, I have talked to our safety director, and the Treasure Island in Barberton is closed. And so,
Chair, he has since reopened.
pardon?
He has since reopened. He had closed after the raid for about a week, but he has since reopened, the Barberton location.
Because I went past, I actually parked my car and went up the front steps to open the door to see if he was open and closed, and at that time he was closed.
Mhm.
They were closed for 3 days. I just spoke to them about half an hour ago, just to confirm it. They were closed for repainting and remodeling. Barberton one was not cited or rated. The Norton one
No,
was.
the Norton one was.
Yes, ma'am.
Well, and what I wanted to say with that is that there is a section in the development code that says a business can temporarily or voluntarily close on their own for up to 6 months. So I'm thinking maybe he decided maybe wasn't feeling well or something of that sort. So I'm going to let Mr. Heidi, because I just don't know what's going on with this, so I'm going to let him do it. All right?
Nope, thank you.
You have the floor, Mr. Heidi.
Thank you, Chair, I appreciate that. And I have asked Chairwoman Angeloff to not pursue any more action on raising fees or changing hours, because it's occurred that with a conditional use permit and the zoning that these are classified in, the only places they can open meets with fierce opposition from citizens all over the board. And I think the easiest way, because I don't like to waste a business owner's time, and it's a waste of their time and their resources to apply for conditional uses, come to the Plan Commission, simply to be denied because the people don't want it. So the easiest route, I would think, is to not issue any more licenses. And then as the current ones eventually close, because no business lasts forever, that would just be the kneel for those businesses. And I could be wrong if council doesn't agree with me, but it just seems that anytime they've come up to open a new one, the people don't want it. And as an at-large representative, I'm following the will of the people and trying to ensure that they don't have to rise up and fight every single time somebody applies for something that they don't want in their neighborhoods. So with that, I can take any questions, or I can...
I would like to continue with that. I was asked by council to meet with the planning director, safety director, to oversee and make any necessary changes on ordinance 53-2012. And we have met twice. There was somebody's on vacation, somebody's off, and now somebody else is off. it's hard to get everybody together. But it looks as though 50, and this is my opinion, 53, 2012 is two parts. One is zoning. Gambling in Ohio is legal. So we have the zoning part of it that says you can't put one of your operations in this area because 1,000 foot, this and that, according to that. The second part of that ordinance is the license application, the license fees, hours of operation, all of that. So the zoning is what kicks in to say, I want to put this next to a school. No, you can't because we have 1,000 foot, according to our zoning. So that prevents that. So strictly, my part of the planning is the zoning. We have zone, and it's the definition of zoning. The other is the Director of Public Safety. In talking with other communities, our Director of Public Safety and I, talking to different communities, they're all set up differently. Some of them is strictly run by the zoning inspector, Chief of Police, the Public Safety, the, zoning, they're all run differently. They're all different. So I had talked to the planning director along with the safety director that we should just start from the beginning and go through the whole thing and make some changes. There's not too many changes for the locations, part of the zoning. But the other ones were, the hours, the license fees, the amount per machine that we charge, all of that, which is run under the Director of Public Safety. So I had pulled quite a few ordinances, and Mrs. Price, she had given me some copies, and from ordinance in 2007 all the way through ordinance 2020, it's always been through the safety committee. And I don't have a problem with that because I've done a lot of research on this. So if you want me to continue doing this, or you have this no new license shall be issued effective upon date, I don't understand what that is.
The date is when.
I know, it's October 11th. But he's,
Look, if I may, Chair?
yes, go ahead.
With the moratorium in place, and
Till
this,
November 30th.
and this being an actual, and I know that this part goes to safety, but my logic, and again, if the chair, if the law director, and if the president agree that it should go to safety, then it should. I thought that because it would be such a change to the code, that it would end up coming to planning.
Oh, I don't have a problem with
Yeah.
it. I mean, we can change it. I mean, this has not been changed since 2012.
Well,
So I
that's why I
agree.
went to
It-
planning, because I
yes.
thought with the code change
So we
in this
need to-
nature.
Exactly, and we did get through the zoning part of it. And I have quite a few notes, and, you can see all my highlights that we've done. It's just that getting back with our third meeting, it just didn't work before council tonight is what I was hoping because of circumstances that I don't have any control over. But, so I'm not done with this yet, and, there's another aspect to this and I don't know this for sure, I haven't researched this or anything, but there's a non-permitted use too that we can. So there's some zoning in this, but I don't understand the no news license should be issued because we do have that moratorium, so we're not going to be doing it until November 30th. And so I'm completely confused. Are we going to do this? Are we going to do this? What are we going to do? Because I haven't talked to you but that one time, and I hadn't received this until Friday. And there's really no explanation on this email. So, Mrs. Colton.
I think that this no new licenses is strictly so that down the road, someone new would come in and see, just like our marijuana thing, it's in place. I don't think this really changes what you're doing. This just means we're not going to take any more licenses.
Well, we would have to,
No,
we would have to go in the development code.
And that's why I went, that's why I thought to go to planning with this too.
Yes. This would have to go into, well, this whole thing with the planning, but I'm saying this no new licenses would have to be researched and gone through the development code. Just as we're saying that, I would, in location, I would like to add church, brick and mortar church or a place of worship. That's not in here, and that was one of the things that we had talked about. So we, Mr. Trevor's not back to work yet. I think he will be here one day this week. And that will, he doesn't have the time to sit down with me to go over some of this stuff, but we are in the process of looking at bids and the cost of having that development code researched and redone. And that, we could do all these changes and they can come in and recommend different changes. And it could take a year for that.
Which is why I asked for, as
So
the moratorium
before we-
expires, to not allow any more licenses to be issued.
Okay, so my problem is right now, I'm sorry. Mr.
No,
Chairman. My problem is right now, I don't want to amend it and then amend it again before the moratorium. I don't want to, which is what happened to one of these ordinances. Apparently, one of the ordinances forgot to make a change on it. They agreed on the change, but then when they typed up the ordinance, it wasn't on there. So then they had to amend that. So I don't like taking an ordinance and amending, we can repeal it and have a brand new one that reads 2021, and we can add this into the development code, into the license issue. But I'm not the
What-
expertise in this.
I
I need
think
to talk to
Mrs.
the Director
Miller.
of Public Safety and the, yes. go ahead,
I'm not
Mrs. Miller.
sure what the confusing part of this is. That ordinance is about zoning and it's about licensing. He's saying he wants a moratorium forever. He's saying there's a moratorium on now and he wants no more licenses issued. The licenses would impact both zoning and the licenses. It's a two-part ordinance, and he wants it to continue forever. That's his intent. Now, I'll research that issue to see if he can do that, but that's all he's asking. Is anybody else on council not
I
understand what he's
didn't know
asking
that's
for?
what he was talking about, Mrs.
Well-
Miller, about a moratorium, because I was asked by Mr. Greer if I would have this ordinance done before the moratorium was up on November 30th, and yes, I was pushing for that. So if this is, and that was another thing that I was gonna come to council and ask, because of this confusion, that we could extend the moratorium. See what planning, what they wanna do and extend the moratorium on that. But that, when it said no more licenses should be issued, extend the moratorium.
But
For me, I'm very simple, I understand that.
But, well,
Mr. Greer,
Thank you, Chair.
thank you for being so patient.
No, I want to thank you for your effort and time and everybody else's time that you had putting into this. This has been a hot topic for a couple months, and then we had the moratorium put in. I put in a request for the fees and the timing and the hours for the businesses, and it was countered with, well, planning's working as a whole to change this stuff, and we'll take this and use it in our plan from planning. So I withdrew that request for legislation with the intent that, and the understanding that, it is probably a good idea that planning does this as a whole when they're doing their research with the moratorium. So when I seen this, it just struck me as more piecemeal, like my piece was trying to put over top. I would like, going back, I would like to keep this in planning. I would like it to go, continue with the planning department doing the overall of this, the whole thing. And I don't want to see an amendment to the current legislation if planning is already going to be recommending amendments and a full change to a lot of things, ordinances and zoning and all this big package. It doesn't, I'm down for extending the moratorium as it stands because with a time limit. But at the end of the day, I don't believe that city council single-handedly should be banning a business. I think that should come from a higher level in administration. And if they recommend it, then we vote on it. And that is what I have to say. So, thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
If I may.
Mr. Hyde, go ahead.
Thank you. Director Miller, anytime conditional use permits come up, how many of them are met with a lot more opposition than proponents?
That's difficult to say.
It's not a lot. I would say we approve 80% at least, in the time I've been on, it's over 20 years. We've turned down very few.
Of skilled gaming shops.
It's at least 80%'s been approved. We can add, conditions to it, what they can and can't do.
Well-
What people need to remember is, once it's a conditional use permit for that area, it isn't the person who applied for it, it's the property. So if that person would leave, somebody else would come in, and if that conditional use permit allowed them to do something else, they could.
Well, that doesn't, I don't seem to understand that one. If the planning commission has approved 80% of conditional use permits for skilled gaming, we have 2 in the city.
No, I'm talking about all
As a whole.
all our CUPs.
Oh,
We
no,
have-
I meant,
Oh,
I was gonna say, I didn't go to MIT, but that's,
I'm talking about all CUPs.
Okay.
On average, it's
Okay.
80%. I don't think we've done any on gaming that I can remember since I've been on. Gaming's just a long time.
If I might interject, just because it came through safety, and I think I came to a planning commission meeting, there was a request, and I can't remember how long ago, for a skilled gaming facility on State Street, I believe, in the
Yes,
old
yes.
Sissons, and it was turned down.
It was
Yes, it was.
for
Um,
zoning. Yeah.
It went to common pleas.
I don't know anything about that, I just
Yeah,
recall
yeah.
that. So that's the only incident that I remember as long as I've been on safety committee, which is a long time, where it went to planning. So I don't even necessarily know that it's an issue that people are trying to open skilled gaming facilities, because I think there are very few areas in the community that they even can, based on our zoning.
Right.
I don't know if that's a fair
Correct, and-
statement, but that's.
That is.
and to counter Counselor Greer's argument there, to extend the moratorium with a time limit is dangling a carrot in front of a potential businessman that residents want nothing to do with his business near them in the very small C4s around town that they could have a conditional use permit. That would be my counter to Counselor
Well,
Greer
and my
there.
counter to a moratorium, I'd like to extend the moratorium because of the consultant doing the new development code, extending that another year. Yes, Mrs. Copeland.
I totally understand why he's asking us
Yes.
not to have any more licenses, period, just because we will continue to have the 2 that are here, but we don't have to go through planning and zoning to, I just think that adding that to this, I agree with us not doing it on a regular basis. But putting this in, no new licenses, to me, just takes a whole lot off your plate as far as having to go through all this, a lot of other
It wouldn't be an
things.
ordinance. It would just be no new licenses.
Right.
And Chair, if I may, one more comment?
Yes, go ahead, Mr. Heidi.
Thank
This is
you.
your legislation.
Oh, thank you. Well, it's your committee.
I don't know what I'm doing. I haven't
Well,
found
yeah,
anybody.
you do, because you did a lot of work on this, and I very much appreciate all that you've done to it. But to add something like this, and with the rewrite of the development code imminent, I would think that if this line was in there, that would give the rewrite a whole easier time to be able to rewrite it if we have that one sentence. Because if the ordinance is this long, governing it, the entire thing, and this line is in there, they may be able to look at that and say, well, it only needs to be this because it
Yeah,
won't
Right,
be
and
it.
that's what I'm saying, you know, if you wanted to, if
but extending them,
license, you know, I mean, if you wanted to have the development code, have the consultants take a look at that, and look what we have and what we want to change, I don't have a problem with that. The problem I have is that I would like our committee, I'd like to recommend to our committee that we hold this request. So that would give me, you know, an opportunity to look at the non-permit use type thing and talk to Mr. Hunt, he is our planning director. And I guess I can talk to Bill, he's been there for 20 years, he knows a little bit more than I do. And then maybe change that to say, you know, to extend, you want the moratorium to be
permanent.
permanent, something of that sort. So I would like I said, I don't know about anybody on my committee, I just got this Friday. You know, we were closed. So I would like to just hold it for that reason, so we can take a little better look at that and possibly, you know, talk to Mr. Hunt. I feel a little bit more comfortable about that. And see what his is on there and see if how close they are to, you know, asking council to enter into a contract with a consultant, the development consultant. And so I'd like to just take this under advisement right now, if that's okay, since we have a lot to discuss.
Well, that's up to you and your committee, but I just wanted to make sure everybody knew where I was coming from, that the whole purpose behind it was the residents fight it, and a business owner would be wasting his time coming in because the residents fight so hard against them. That makes it difficult with their zoning, with their classification, and just the general opposition. So if nothing else, the committee and the body do know where
The zoning.
do know where I'm.
You know, the zoning is what, Mrs. Fry, go ahead.
I have a question about the moratorium. It's not up until November the 30th.
Correct.
And you're coming forward and saying it ends November 11th. At least that's what my copy of legislation says. Now, did you do that based on the fact of having 3 readings and it would be done on the 30th?
I took into account 3 readings to try to counter the moratorium expiring and overlapping if it was possible.
Well, and Mrs. Miller could answer this question. Could you just amend the moratorium to say that that we are no longer accepting
No, the
licenses?
moratorium has a lot listed. There, on that moratorium, there's used car lots.
That's
there's
true. But
different
could you
things
just
on
list, could you cut that out and
Well,
say,
that would be, yeah, that would be a new legislation, I would think, yes.
And with a moratorium with a time limit, I think we're just kicking the can down the road instead of being permanent. That's just my opinion, and like I said, if nothing else, the body does know from where I'm coming on this. So I respect the committee's decision. Counselor Angeloff, I respect and love everything you've done with this. But if nothing else, then everybody can leave here knowing what direction I was thinking. So,
Well, and
thank
that's
you.
the direction I was thinking too, but you had called me so excited because you had heard that Treasure Island had closed.
And
So you wanted to jump on that right away. And doing some research on that, the development code says that a business, any business in town has that, they can close for 6 months without having to reapply, that type thing. We just didn't have a date. Now, it was online that he was closed September 3rd, and that was like almost a date because nobody knew exactly when he closed. It had nothing to do with the state of Ohio. He closed it voluntarily. So when you called me, that was an opportunity that you could, you know, say no new licenses because the 2 that we have in town are grandfathered in.
Right.
And now he's reopened, so that's,
But we have an opportunity to put it to rest that the residents can sleep easy knowing when the State Street one came up for conditional use, I had people coming into my work establishment voicing opposition. I mentioned names to you that you followed up with, but there were some others that didn't want to give me their names and said they wanted nothing to do with it.
No, I met with the residents.
Mhm.
Yes. I
So
was-
you know, and this,
So-
it just seemed like with the moratorium expiring, with that place temporarily closing voluntarily, that it's like, to me, it was, let's just shut it down completely. The people don't want it, and I'm just a representative of them.
Mrs. Betty, go ahead.
Thank you, Chair. I would just argue that I think that the system worked that we have in place. It didn't open, and I'm reluctant to make any changes like that at this point. There are not a lot of places that are zoned properly. We've had very few applications, and, you know, I don't like them. I never gamble. I hate to gamble. But some people don't like bars, and are we gonna do that to bar? I mean, at what point is it our job to legislate things like that? And I'm not comfortable banning them completely, because I think we have a system in place that essentially limits where they can even be. And I think through the conditional use permit, we had the ability to stop what the residents didn't want, so, which was the point of the conditional use permit. So,
And to a point, I agree to that too, because we only have 2 of them in town and they're grandfathered in.
Mhm.
So this new ordinance or this new ordinance, whichever, would be for new people coming in. But that was one of the things in the development code, you know, if you looked at all those ordinances that I have and did all that study on it, you know, there was changes, very good changes, from 500 foot to 1,000 foot, you know, from an area. And Mrs. Miller can attest to that on State Street. She was part of that. And so it does work. But at this time, I would like to hold this piece of legislation in committee, and so I can still do some more research on that.
Okay.
Do I have a motion for that? To hold it in committee?
You just
I
don't
don't
want to
think
bring
you
it
need a
out
motion
of
to hold it.
committee.
Oh, I
No,
thought I
you
had
ju-
to have
I-
a motion.
I believe you just don't entertain the vote.
Yeah, you just
Okay.
don't entertain a vote.
Okay, well, there's no vote on that. All right.
Okay.
Now, let's continue. I have a letter from Mayor William Judd requesting the appointment of Mr. Chad Klein to the City of Barberton Board of Zoning Appeals for the unexpired term starting immediately and ending December 31st, 2023. Mr. Klein, and Finance and Personnel, did you get your copies?
I don't think I did.
Okay, because I did request that through Mrs. Price.
all the residents?
No?
No other council members.
I did
Chair.
not receive any.
Mrs. Price, we need all those. Okay, he is a Barberton boy. In fact, my husband coached him in Little League, and my son-in-law helped him coach my grandson and his son. He is eager to start looking at Barberton. This is his town. He's been here his whole life. I think he'd be very, very good on the Board of Zoning Appeals with his background. We will get the resumes to everybody. Okay, since this is an unexpired term starting immediately, do I have a motion to call for this?
I'll call for it.
Mrs. Coburn, do I have a second?
And I'll second.
We want to make sure everyone gets his resume
Right.
there.
Yes.
We can't vote on it
I did
until-
send that email out.
Yep.
So,
Yes, we can.
What?
actually,
Mhm.
it's unexpired.
Right.
He works for S&A Communal as a foreman. He's a journeyman, he's a pipe fitter. He was in the Navy, and he's certified in fire sprinkling and backflow prevention. So, for the Board of Zoning Appeals, that's a good, his background is good for that. The second I have is a letter from Mayor William Judd requesting the appointment of Mrs. Mariah Cheatham Williams to the city's planning commission for the unexpired term starting immediately and ending December 31st, 2023. She is replacing Mr. Ron Muller. And we all know who her father is. She's an attorney, a civil law attorney. She works for Renzo and Andrus, and she's a Barberton girl. Do I have a motion to call for this?
I'll make that motion.
Coburn, second.
I'll second it.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Okay, the next one is, we will have to hold this until October because this is Mr. Haskell, James Haskell, for the Board of Zoning Appeals. It would be starting his new term. So I will hold that until October and represent that. He's already serving, and we'll make sure that everybody gets copies of their application and their resume.
Okay.
Okay. I'm not gonna go into miscellaneous because I always take up so much time and I apologize for that. Plan zoning is not easy. It's a lot of work. I enjoy it. This is my 4th year on that, but I just need a motion to adjourn.
I'll make that motion.
Mrs. Coburn, do I
Chair.
have a second?
Chair, you're not entertaining miscellaneous discussion?
No, I've taken up way too much time. We have the next meeting to go to.
Okay.
Did you have miscellaneous?
I
Did
did.
you have anything to discuss?
I did not. I was just clarifying.
Did you?
Mm-mm.
Mr. Midges, anything miscellaneous? Do I have a second?
I'll second.
Justin, do you have a second? All in favor?
No, just the time.
Okay, we are adjourned at 6:58.
You good?
Yep.
Okay, next up is City Properties, Parks, and Recreation with Mr. Heidig.
Thank you, Mr. President. Call to order City Properties, Parks, and Recreation. It is Tuesday, September 7th, 2021. The time is 6:58, and we are in council chambers. All members are present, plus guests noted. I have no new requests for legislation. I have no pending legislation. And does anyone from the committee have any miscellaneous discussion?
It's great to
Counselor?
see the swans back on the lake, even though they're trumpeters instead of mute. It was great to see the release yesterday.
Councilor Angeloff?
Thank you, Mr. Heidig. The month of August, I had quite a few meetings, and one was the Month Fest. And we have, other than the business crafters, they're still kind of thin, but we have like 130 crafters and numerous food vendors that are coming back to the Month Fest. So we are in full swing with that, and keep our fingers crossed that the month will be open. And we will be selling them starting Wednesday before the Month Fest on the corner of 3rd and Hopkins. Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor, and you are right, it is nice to see it,
Back.
lack of a better word, blossoming again. Counselor Greer?
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to give an update. This past weekend, obviously it was Labor Day, and just want to thank the volunteers. Mr. Bevick was on the committee too, as well as myself, Thompson, and there's a lot of people, everybody, Mr. Griffin, everybody volunteered. That was a huge success. They're saying that the numbers were anywhere from 10 to 12,000 at its peak on that. A lot of activities, a lot of good feedback. We only had about 3 incidents. Just a missing kid that was found real fast, and a missing cars were the other thing. People from out of town, which is a good thing, couldn't find where they parked. So ultimately they ended up just disoriented, lost. So we ended up handling that relatively good. The fishing derby, we had the fishing derby. The Parks Department stocked the Lake Anna again earlier this year with feeder fish to kind of build the ecosystem and get everything moving. They also stocked it with largemouth bass, 10-inch to 12-inch bass on Saturday before the fishing derby. So Sunday there was the fishing derby. We shattered the record of 50 kids, and we did 146. So we had 146, so there was about 300, 400 people walking around the lake, fishing, and everything was a great success. So I just wanted to thank all the volunteers and committee members, everybody that made it possible, and it was a huge success.
Was there an award for most unusual fish caught?
It was 11-inch flat-shelled turtle. Yeah,
Not a snappy.
no.
Counselor Angela?
And I just want to say, this is a good thing, but the lines to get ribs were almost an hour long. Now, I like ribs, so I don't have a problem standing in line for an hour, but that was the only complaint, which is a good complaint. So I just wanted to say that.
Counselor Jaber?
Thank you, Mr. Heidick. Any new updates on the skate park yet?
Mr. Mayor, I don't see.
Mr.
Director
Hunt's been out on
Patterson.
maternity leave.
Yeah, I don't think anything.
As far as I know, they're still doing some environmentals, so that's out of our hands, that's our consultant. I know they've got probably about 5 or 6 projects throughout the city that they're working on, so they could include soil samples and it's got to go to the lab, and so there's a lot that goes into it, so. But, we provided the renderings, and the cost estimate is about $150,000.
You have a plan, Mr. Heidick, start doing that fundraising, or? how you-
I did speak with the director of the foundation about applying for a matching grant to start gathering private donations in an account with them that would be time limited to give us some sort of serious kickstart here to really get this project moving. As the mayor said, with it being in the environmental phase, I would be hard pressed to believe that ground would be broken this year. But if we were to get something started, that possibly, hopefully the springtime, we would be able to see the fruits of our labors there. And I will be coming to council with a request soon.
And also, any new updates on the vacant properties?
I've almost completed. I've met with everybody. Talked with everybody. I've got a lot of good information. I see where everybody has their concerns with different things. We're able to work a lot of that out, and once I get it completely typed up, I'll be presenting it, and we'll see how that goes.
Thank you.
I had planned on typing it up last week, but I got kind of sidetracked with some other events going on in my life right now, so I do apologize for that. But I do have a rough copy typed up, and once I clean it up, I will be bringing it forward.
Appreciate it, thank you.
Thank you, Counselor. Anything else from the gallery, or Counselor
Mr.
Griffin?
Heidick, what's the status on the doors and the damage repairs that was done to the parks? Have we ordered the doors? Have we did any work?
I have not heard from Director Patterson yet. I was going to reach out to him tomorrow morning about all those with the windows down there to Everly Webb and the casings that were found, if
Right.
anything's come about of that. I know he's been on top of this, but he's looking at some different things. I know he's looking at different camera systems possibly, all sorts of ideas. But once again, once he finds something, it's just like anything else, it's got to come down to money, to what we can do and how we can safeguard our parks better.
Question for you,
Councilman
maybe
Jaber?
Mr. Flaker also.
Mhm.
Was there a grant in 2016 or 17, certain amount of time for cameras and security for the parks that the city was given?
There was.
I've heard rumors of almost 200, have you heard that same thing?
Yeah,
Almost $200,000?
over to.
I just want to see where that money went. I mean, right now, there's literally no cameras at all in the Parks Department at all. No security, no padlocks, some of them don't even have locks on them. So if you find that information about I'm pretty sure they're on 220,000.
Something like that.
If you can find that out for us and send us some emails, please. Thank you.
Counselor Angela?
Mr. Jaber, that was this year? What year was that grant?
I heard 2016, 2017. I wasn't on council when that happened. But it was over $200,000.
I don't remember it.
But you did not make contact with the foundation director on that?
No, ma'am.
You did not?
Was it through the foundation, do you know of?
Mr. Griffin, what'd you hear?
Or was it through a private?
I don't know, where the funds come from. All I know is I had talked to the director, and that's what we came up with. He came up with that 200 and some thousand was allocated for, and so I asked him, I said, where's the money? Well, he knew. So that's all I know. And there was no cameras installed, as far as I know.
So if we made, Chair, if I may.
By all means,
If
Counselor.
if we did pass a resolution allowing the mayor or his designee to apply for a grant, we should have that legislation, so we should be able to search fairly quickly 2016, 2017, and at least see what we requested.
Again, I'm not
So-
sure what year it was around, I just heard of the amount.
I think from 2012 on is online, so I'll look and
Yeah.
see
it's 2000,
if I
yeah.
can find it. If it came through that
Through us,
avenue.
yes.
Yes. And now, if it didn't come through that avenue, I don't know.
I just really think we need the cameras and security. I mean,
Okay.
too many problems are having going on in parks. I'm getting a lot of complaints at Griffin Park and the parks where Mr. Griffin's at in his ward.
I concur there. Do I have anything else from anyone? Hearing none, do I have a motion to adjourn?
Motion to that?
Thank you.
I'll second.
Thank you. And we are adjourned at 7:07.
Thanks. I'd like to bring to order the Public Welfare and Safety Committee meeting, but before I do, I would also like to congratulate Mr. Heidig and comment on Mrs. Angelov's comment that I know the flowers are beautiful, but I don't want to bring them every Monday or Tuesday. So, so with that being said, enjoy them tonight because
Once a month, maybe?
probably not. So
Again, thank you.
I'd love to do it. I just don't want to do it every week. So I'd like to bring to order the Public Welfare and Safety Committee meeting. It's Tuesday, September 7th, 2021 at 7:10 PM here in council chambers. All members of the committee are present, as well as all council members and all others noted. We have one request for legislation, and it's a letter from Chief Persley requesting legislation to appropriate $220, which is a donation from Abundant Faith Ministries from the unappropriated item of the general fund to the fire department's operating budget of the general fund to be used towards EMS supplies. This will be referred to finance. Does anyone have any questions about this piece of legislation? Hearing none, do I have a motion to call for this?
I will make a motion to call for this piece of legislation.
Motion made by Mr. Greer. Do I have a second?
Second.
Second by Mr. Griffin. All in favor?
Aye.
Any miscellaneous discussion for safety this evening? Mr. Persley, do you have anything for us? No? Okay. Hearing none, do I have a motion to adjourn?
So
Oh.
moved.
Motion made by Mr. Griffin.
And I would second that motion.
Second by Mr. Greer. We are adjourned at 7:12.
The microphone.
Oh, okay.
I don't know. It's
No, it's rules.
rules.
You're right.
Thanks.
Yeah, the other one doesn't work so well. Yeah, we should probably order
Did you not?
another.
I have an
Okay,
extra one.
next up is Rules, Marketing, and Development with Mr. Griffin.
Did she get one?
I have two. Somebody that's on, maybe Craig. Craig?
Thank you, Mr. President. Rules, Marketing, Development, I'd like to call this meeting to order at 7:09. All members present and those noted tonight. We have no request for legislation. We are open for miscellaneous discussion, anything for rules. Charlie? Hearing none, do we have a motion to adjourn?
I'll make that motion.
I'll second that, sir.
Well, thank you, Mr. Jaber and Mr. Heidick. We are adjourned at 7:10.
Ow.
You're getting a workout.
Oh, yeah.
Running around all day.
I didn't know these were beautiful. I thought they were from Canes, and I thought they were from Bay Day.
Well, they are from Bay Bay, from his wedding.
Okay, next up is city utilities with Mrs. Culver.
Okay, thank you, Mr. President. It's September 7th, 2021, and I'd like to bring to order the city utilities. All members are present and those noted on my list. We have one request for legislation. This is a letter from Denny Weaver requesting legislation authorizing the appropriation of $361,000 from the unappropriated item of the sewer fund to the capital budget of the sewer fund. Funds are available through the OPWC grant and a WPCLF loan. This appropriation is necessary for the WWTP improvement Phase 3 and 3B and 3C project awarded by CY Consultants through
CT.
ordinance.
It's CT.
It's CT, okay. Well, I just read what was here. Thank you. CT Consultants through ordinance number 77, 2021. Emergency wording is requested to facilitate timeliness in keeping the project moving forward. This will be referred to finance. Do I have a motion to call for this? Mrs. Fry? And this is, you'll second. Thank you, Mrs. DeBevick. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. We have no other pertinent information, nothing else major. Do we have any miscellaneous discussion to this for utilities? Mr. Greer.
Thank you, Chair. I just wanted to thank the city workers that came out. I had a water main break next to my neighbor's house, and his basement was like in shambles and flooded, and I know they were probably getting ready to go to the Labor Day parade with their family, and they got a call to come out and fix that, so I just wanted to send out a special thanks. I know the neighbors really appreciated it.
Okay, anything else? Hearing none, do I have a motion to adjourn?
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Okay, Carol, Mrs. Fry, and seconded by Carla DeBevick. We are adjourned at 7:16.
Okay, thank you. Next up is finance and personnel, Mrs. Fry.
You didn't turn it off?
No.
Okay. Okay, I'm gonna stop it for a second, though. Start
But I'm
it
gonna
back up.
turn the heat off. It's freezing.
It is Tuesday, September 7th, 2021. The time is 7:16 PM. We are in council chambers, and I am bringing the Finance and Personnel Committee meeting to order. All members of the committee are present, as well as all members of council and guests as noted on my agenda sheet. We have a couple of requests for legislation for this evening. The first is a letter from Jeremy Flaker requesting a resolution designating the following institutions as public depositories for a 5-year period commencing October 20th, 2021 and expiring October 19th, 2026. Emergency wording is requested, as 3 readings would put this resolution going into effect outside the expiration date of October 19th, 2021, of the existing resolution, which is resolution number 108, 2016. The banks that are listed are Chase Bank, Fifth Third Bank, Huntington Bank, Dollar Bank, Key Bank, PNC Bank, Star Ohio, US Bank, and Westfield Bank. This piece of legislation is necessary to replace the resolution that is going to expire. The reason that we need this particular piece of legislation is to have the ability to switch banks to hold the city's money if we decide that we would like to leave our current bank. And therefore, the bank that you would move to has to be in this resolution. Does anyone have any questions about this? Mr. Greer.
Do we have issues currently?
I beg your pardon?
Are we having banking issues currently? Is that?
No, you just have to do,
Okay.
and if Mr. Flaker would like to chime in, he can.
Yeah, we have no banking issues whatsoever right now. It's just required that every 5 years we update this ordinance or resolution. And we can add banks, take away banks. So in no way, shape, or form am I looking to change banks right now. It's just, like I said, it is required that we have this resolution in place. Just like Councilman Fry mentioned, if for some reason we do end up having problems with our current bank and if we need to switch banks, we have a list of banks that we could possibly go to move the city's funds.
Thank you, Mr. Flaker. Any other questions, Mr. Heidick?
Thank you, Chair. Director Flaker, there's a lot of these banks have either left Barberton, leaving Barberton, not in Barberton. Is there a reason they would do business with us or we would do business with them?
Some of those banks, I do know, like Star Ohio and Westfield, they are holding some of our investment money. That's why they're listed on there. The other banks, more than likely, if we would ever switch a bank, I will be switching to a bank that's here in Barberton, just for the main fact, for deposit purposes. That way, when we do make a deposit, we don't have to travel out of the city of Barberton. And I prefer to deal with a bank that supports the city.
Thank you.
Any other questions?
I'm just,
Oh, Mrs. DeBerry. I'm
thank you,
sorry.
Chair. I'm just curious, when was the last time we even switched banks?
Oh, it's
40 years.
It's been many years. I mean,
Okay, I just,
we technically switched when I'm been bought out First Merit, but yeah, it's been many years.
I was just
I
curious.
think the city's
No reason.
started with First National and it got transformed into First Merit and then now in Donington.
Okay, any other questions? All right, do I have a motion to call for this piece of legislation?
I'll make a motion.
Motion made by Mrs. DeBevick and seconded by Mrs. Angeloff. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, the second piece of legislation that was requested is also a letter from Mr. Flaker, requesting legislation to reduce the capital budget of the general lighting fund by $200,000. This is needed so that Mr. Flaker can reduce the capital budget of the general lighting fund to $0, since the note ordinance associated with the general lighting fund was withdrawn. This amount was in the budget approved by council in March because the budget ordinance was never amended to remove this amount after the note ordinance was withdrawn. Emergency wording and one reading are requested so that Mr. Flaker can get these reduced as soon as possible, so no one is able to enter a requisition from that line item, which would put this fund in the negative. Mr. Flaker is asking that this be adopted at the September 13th, 2021 regular legislative meeting of council. Does anybody have any questions about this? No. Therefore, can I have a motion to call for it? Mrs. Angeloff made a motion. Do I have a second?
I will second it.
Mrs. DeBevick, I'm sorry.
I do have just a real quick question though before we vote. So the money is still in the general lighting fund, it's just not, won't be allocated for the,
Basically what it is when the budget was approved, like Mrs. Fry was saying in the letter I typed up, the money was in the budget that was passed by council, so that appropriation is still out there. Well, if we take out an appropriation for $200,000, that will overdraw that fund, and I want to ensure that we don't do that. That's why I want to remove that $200,000 appropriation, so that does not happen.
okay.
Okay, we already had it called for, so all in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay, that passes unanimously as well. The third piece of legislation that has been requested is a letter from Elizabeth Doherty requesting legislation to receive grant funding for the purposes of mitigating COVID-19 costs between March 2020 through August 2020. The City of Barberton applied for funding in the amount of $112,783.53 and remains in the application process. This request for legislation is in anticipation of receiving full reimbursement for eligible expenditures. Emergency wording is requested due to the anticipation of receiving funds during the month of September 2021. Any questions? Mrs. DeBevick.
Thank you, Chair. Mr. Flaker, will this go into a specific account?
I would have to look at the grant and look what they submitted in that. I would have to take a look, because if I'm remembering this grant correctly when it was submitted, it was paying for wages, so I would have to see where those wages were paid out of, and reimburse the grant, the funds accordingly, depending on how that grant is turned in.
Okay, so it will just come into the general fund?
If we had some workers, because like I said, I want to say there was some workers like in the utilities department that was possibly included in this. So some of it could go back into utilities as well. Like I said, I would have to see what they all submitted for this grant and see what funds we used to pay out the expenses that was submitted.
Okay,
And then, like I said, I would give it back to the funds accordingly.
thank you.
Okay, any other questions? Do I have a motion to call for this?
I'll make a motion.
Mrs. DeBevick and Mr. Medges. Got to get him in the mix here. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Thank you. This also passes. The fourth piece of legislation was referred to us from safety. It is in the form of a letter from Chief Persley requesting legislation to appropriate $220, which is a donation from Abundant Faith Ministries, from the unappropriated item of the general fund to the fire department's operating budget of the general fund to be used towards EMS supplies. Mrs. DeVevick had explained this during her safety meeting, but does anybody have any other questions regarding this? Okay, hearing none, do I have a motion to call for this piece of legislation?
I'll make a motion.
Motion made by Mrs. DeVevick and seconded by Mrs. Angeloff. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay. The fifth piece of legislation that is being requested is a letter from Dennis Weaver requesting legislation authorizing the appropriation of $361,000 from the unappropriated item of the sewer fund to the capital budget of the sewer fund. Funds are available through an OPWC grant and a WPCLF loan. This appropriation is necessary for the wastewater treatment plant improvements, phases 3B and 3C project, awarded to CT Consultants through ordinance number 77-2021. Emergency wording is requested to facilitate timeliness in keeping the project moving forward. This piece of legislation, or this request, was referred from utilities. Does anyone have any questions? Okay, hearing none, do I have a motion to call for this? Motion made by Mrs. Angela.
I'll make the motion, but I do have a question.
Oh,
that
okay.
Just popped in my
Okay,
head.
and seconded by
So-
Mrs. DeBevick.
Yes. So, Mr. Weaver, does that mean that we've received an invoice thus far for $361,000 from
No.
CT Consultants?
No, what it does, it places the line item in the budget so that as we are reimbursed for this from WPCLF or OPWC, we can pay the contractor,
Okay.
CT.
Thank you for the clarification. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Okay, it has been called for. Now, please, signify, we have to vote.
All in favor?
Yeah, all in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Okay,
Trying to hurry up.
all right. I'm sorry, I'm making some notes for myself. All right, that is all the legislation that has been requested of finance, and I'll open it up for miscellaneous discussion if anybody has any questions or comments. Okay, hearing none, do I have a motion to adjourn?
I'll make the
Motion made by Mrs. DeBevick and seconded by Mrs. Angeloff, and we are adjourned at 7:30 p.m. Thank you.
Okay, that concludes our committee reports. We will go into a committee of the whole meeting after a 2-minute recess.
Sure, actually. Officially.
Well, if they get it, it will spend.
I did, because I, let me double check, I don't trust myself.
Goes away.
I think those may be
There'll be
right.
no paper trail.
Because-
That's it.
Okay, I got Cheatham and Klein.
You don't mind? Oh, well,
Bebe, go.
Idea, but you know, realistically.
Yes, I have those too. Sorry, I wanted to make sure.
Yeah,
Leave.
well,
This is
yeah, I've
Grandma.
been looking at the
Grandma will leave
grants.
the little reception around.
Oh, my God.
There's a million.
I appreciate that.
Process applications for this, but for that large though. Okay.
I forgot to
I got this.
congratulate
I don't
her.
know.
I have to do that.
Was I supposed to?
It didn't come
Hold
down
on,
to
it
me.
didn't make it down. I'm sorry.
Oh.
I'm slacking. I don't know. I didn't know that.
I
What
wanna
this
say,
is how it was handed to me.
Decided it's one of yours.
One says Williams and one is Klein.
In the
Oh, I already have these. Are these ones from you? Because I'm on the committee.
Oh,
So.
that's right, okay. Well, then these two are yours.
See, that makes sense now.
Oh, thank you.
That's what she means.
Thank you.
Okay. Yeah.
I appreciate that.
And did you
Yes.
give,
You do the one for your city property, right?
Yep.
and you got,
I did not get either.
we're supposed to leave
Perfect.
those,
Thank you,
right?
thank you.
Those are your
No,
vases and stuff.
no, he bought all the flowers.
Oh.
I just, it's for you to take.
Hey, you guys doing
Yes,
Halloween
it's for-
decorations
yes.
this
He
year?
wanted to order flowers from me for all of the council members and department. So we ordered 18. So I made them and brought them. And I just bought the vases on Amazon so that
They're
everyone
pretty.
can take them.
Everything's pretty. I like the purple, I like the peach. Very nice. Are you still doing that a lot or no? You'd like to do it all.
Yes and no. I mean, it was
like everything.
It was a holiday yesterday, and I was doing it at 5 o'clock in the evening because I had to work all day, you know.
Yeah, I'd like to change that, but that's no big deal. If I submit them, but I'll just.
That's only if it's expired. You'll have to check it unexpired. Yeah, Phil.
Make sure Sean
Lisa, are you leaving? Take a flower.
I'm sorry?
Take a flower.
Oh, take a flower.
Yes. I have to carry these home. I'm going to be doing that.
Little red bread. Little red bread coming.
My buddy sends me a picture.
Because they die, they die.
I'll be where he might pull out. I haven't seen this yet. He might like show me.
Most of the knockout roses. Knockout roses are simple.
He said
Actual
he's
rose
from
bushes.
North High School.
Oh, my aunt, my mom and them grew up on Virginia between Lovers Lane
One
and
less.
Bedford. Well, that was my
One less somebody else has to take.
My aunt,
Oh, this is
I had
stupid.
an extra
she had
one.
500.
Another extra one?
No, this was an extra utility, so
Oh,
I'm just gonna fold it over and, because I checked with all the committees to make sure they have their extra.
I, it's, I hate these, I hate these, I hate these.
Yeah.
Where were you? I never saw you in the truck in front of my store.
I have to change it.
I didn't
Doing
even
my
see,
code in front of the
you
camera.
didn't throw us no candy.
He was,
Switching up a little bit. We got a couple football players with us.
Oh,
Was Ryland with you?
No,
Was Ryland with you?
these guys didn't want to walk with Gatto, so they jumped on the truck. So I sure to tell them.
Roosevelt was with you.
Well, I go, you know I grew up with the coach, right? They'll go,
Yeah, I heard Roosevelt jumped on your.
Okay, let's get this thing going here.
okay.
Okay, this is Barberton City Council meeting. This is the Committee of the Whole. Today is Tuesday, September 7th, 2021. I call this meeting to order at 7:34. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Citizens addressing council, I looked up there aren't any. So we will go right into our committee reports. First off is Planning, Annexation, and Codes with Mrs. Ansel.
Oh, Lord, have mercy on us. I didn't say that out loud.
Thank you, Mr. President, and thank you, Mrs. Coburn. I'll do it fast.
I'm sorry.
The Planning, Annexation, and Codes Committee met this evening at 6:15 in council chambers. All my committee members were present, along with all council members and guests as noted on my sheet. We had 2 pieces of legislation, actually 3 pieces, I'm sorry. The first one is a letter from Mr. Trevor Hunt, our planning director, requesting legislation to rezone the properties on Norton Avenue, and I will give the addresses. They're known as 673, 671, and 657 Norton Avenue to be rezoned from C3 Community Center Commercial to I2 Medium Industry. And the second parcel that's across the street is known as 666 Norton Avenue from RT40, 2 family, to I2 Medium Industry. The planning commission has met on this, and I forgot to mention before, and we have 2 public hearings on the zoning, and they approved they're recommending the approval to rezone these properties. We will have 3 readings on that. The second is a letter from Mr. Trevor Hunt, planning director, requesting legislation to rezone the property on George Street. And that address is 311 George Street. That piece of property, there's an existing building there. He'd like to turn that into a 2 one-bedroom, single-story unit. And the other piece of property is 303 George Street. He'd like to build 4 3-bedroom, 2-story units. There are a couple empty lots that he will be putting parking in between. And this is, as Mrs. Miller said, this is a rezoning only. The planning commission did not recommend, council did not recommend this with the plans that he had, and hopefully he will come through with some new plans, and we'll see those changes on that. The third is a letter from Mr. Thomas Heidig, councilperson at large, requesting legislation to amend ordinance 53, 2012, amusement device, skill-based amusement machines and arcades, license fee transfer and display, chapter 836.04B, to add the language at the end to say no new licenses shall be issued effective upon date October 11th, 2021. We had a lot of discussion on this, and this will be held in the committee, so I can do some more research on this as a language and maybe another option. I have a letter from Mayor Judd requesting the appointment of Mr. Chad Klein to the City of Barberton's Board of Zoning Appeals for the unexpired term starting immediately ending December 31st, 2023. This is a Barberton boy. I have Mrs. Price make copies, and everybody should have his resume. And this was called for. A letter from Mr. Mayor Judge requesting the appointment of Mrs. Moriah Cheatham Williams to the Barberton Planning Commission for the unexpired term starting immediately and ending December 31st, 2023. And I really don't have to say much about her. Everybody knows the family and her. The third letter request, I will be holding that for a appointment. He is currently on the Board of Zoning Appeals, so I will be holding this till October according to council rules. And no miscellaneous discussion at this meeting because we had lots of discussion, and with that I pass.
Thank you. Next up is Mr. Greer with Streets, Sidewalks, and Lighting.
Thank you, Mr. President. Streets, Sidewalk, and Lighting met today, September 7th, 2021 at 6 p.m. here in the council chambers. All committee members were present. All council members were present, and guests noted on my sheet. Topics of discussion, there was one request for legislation. It was a letter from Greg Tracy requesting legislation to enter into contract with Akron Tractor and Equipment in the amount of $88,245.99 for the purchase of a New Holland Workmaster 95 cab tractor. And this tractor will have a rear-mounted boom mower on it. And Mr. Tracy requested that this be emergency wording and one reading. The current mower is about 22 years old, breaks often, and has wiring issues. It's a safety issue, and the boom has been welded over 20 times. So they're going to use the old mower as a backup. And get this. This was in the budget across multiple departments. And the mower will be used across multiple departments, including the streets, parks, water and sewer, and stormwater. The motion passed, and that'll be coming to the floor. Miscellaneous discussion. Mr. Tracy provided some updates on the 2021 road program. Said Pier and Asphalt is about 90% done with the concrete work, and he's foreseeing them to start and milling and paving in about a week or two, possibly. The chip and seal work is done They do have to do the fog seal, which is the tar on top of the chip and seal still. So once that is all cured up enough, they will be doing that probably here in a couple weeks too. He gave us an update on the Fifth Street milling, or the Fifth Street paving, the surfacing of that. The construction company is also working on the I-76 project, and they had just some setbacks, but they are expecting to get to the 76 area and Fifth Street probably around mid-September. Mrs. DeBevick asked about the deadline that the construction companies have to abide by, which is October 31st, 2021. And there is penalties in the contract if they don't complete the work by the timeline, but Mr. Tracy does not foresee that there'll be any issues. There was no other miscellaneous discussion, and with that, street, sidewalk, and lighting will pass.
Thank you. Next up is city utilities with Mrs. Colbert.
Thank you, Mr. President. City Utilities met this evening, September 7th, 2021, in council chambers. All members were present. We had one request for legislation, a letter from Dennis Weaver requesting legislation authorizing the appropriation of $361,000 from the unappropriated item of the sewer fund to the capital budget of the sewer fund. Funds are available through an OPWC grant and a WPCLF loan. This appropriation is necessary for the WWTP Improvement Phase 3B and 3C project awarded to CT Consultants through ordinance number 77-2021. Emergency wording is requested to facilitate timeliness in keeping the project moving. This has been referred to finance. With that, I pass.
Thank you. Next up is Mrs. DeBevick with Public Welfare and Safety.
Thank you, Mr. President. Public Welfare and Safety met this evening here in council chambers. All members of the committee were present, as well as all council members and all others noted. We had one request for legislation. It was a letter from Chief Persley requesting legislation to appropriate $220, a donation which was received from Abundant Faith Ministries from the unappropriated item of the general fund to the fire department's operating budget of the general fund to be used towards EMS supplies. And this was also referred to finance. We had no miscellaneous discussion, and with that, Public Welfare and Safety will pass.
Thank you. Next up is Mr. Griffin with Rules, Marketing, and Development.
Thank you, Mr. President. Rules, Marketing, and Development met tonight in council chambers. All members were present and others as noted. We had no requests for legislation or miscellaneous discussion. With that, I pass.
Thank you. Next up is Mr. Jaber with Environmental Health and Social Services.
Thank you, Mr. President. Environmental Health and Social Services met September 7, 2021. Council chambers, all members present. We originally had two new requests for legislation. The first one was passed on after Mr. Heidig gave us some dates. So that one was just skipped on. Second one, we had a resolution for Mr. Kobe Fair Jr., and that one was passed. And miscellaneous, we had Mr. The Mayor talk about the COVID numbers going up and the future, how we are going to do that active adult center or we're going to stay in chambers. And with that, we adjourned at 6:17, and I pass, sir.
Thank you. With Mr. Heidig absent right now, Mr. Jaber, you will handle city properties, parks, and recreation.
Thank you, Mr. President. City Properties and Parks Recreation met September 7th, 2021. All members were present. We had no new requests for legislation and no pending also. Miscellaneous remarks, we just brought up again about the skate park and also city properties he's working on. And that, we adjourn, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mrs. Fry is up next with Finance and Personnel.
Thank you, Mr. President. The Finance and Personnel Committee met tonight, Tuesday, September 7th, 2021, and the meeting came to order at 7:16. We are in council chambers. All members of the committee were present, as well as all members of council and guests as noted on my agenda sheet. We had several pieces of we had several requests for legislation. The first was a letter from Jeremy Flaker requesting a resolution designating the following institutions as public depositories for a 5-year period commencing 10/20/2021 and expiring 10/19/2026. Emergency wording was requested as 3 readings would put this resolution going into effect outside the expiration date of 10/19/2021, which is the date that the existing resolution expires, and that is resolution number 108-2016. The banks on the list are Chase Bank, Star Ohio, Fifth Third Bank, U.S. Bank, Huntington Bank, Westfield Bank, Dollar Bank, Key Bank, and PNC Bank. This is a piece of a resolution that must be done. We must have it in place every 5 years, so as they expire, we create a new one with the names of the banks that we can use if for some reason we leave our current bank that holds the money for the city. That passed. It's out of committee. The second request for legislation was also a letter from Jeremy Flaker. This is legislation to reduce the capital budget of the General Lighting Fund by $200,000. This piece of legislation is needed so that Mr. Flaker can reduce the capital budget of the General Lighting Fund to $0, since the note ordinance associated with the General Lighting Fund was withdrawn. This amount was in the budget approved by council in March because the budget ordinance was never amended to remove this amount after the note ordinance was withdrawn. Emergency wording and 1 reading are requested so that Mr. Flaker can get this reduced as soon as possible so no one is able to enter a requisition from that particular line item, which would put this fund in the negative. Mr. Flaker is asking that this be adopted at the September 13, 2021 regular legislative meeting of council. It also came out of committee. The next piece of legislation that was requested was came in the form of a letter from Elizabeth Doherty, our safety director, requesting legislation to receive grant funding for the purposes of mitigating COVID-19 costs between March 2020 through August 2020. The City of Barberton applied for funding in the amount of $112,783.53 and remains in the application process. This request for legislation is in anticipation of receiving full reimbursement for eligible expenditures. Emergency wording is requested due to the anticipation of receiving funds during the month of September 2021. Mrs. DeBevick asked if this particular amount of money would be put into a certain fund, and Mr. Flaker replied that he must research which funds were affected and he will reimburse them as necessary. The next piece of legislation was referred to Finance by Safety. It is a letter from Chief Pursley requesting legislation to appropriate $220, a donation from Abundant Faith Ministries from the unappropriated item of the general fund to the fire department's operating budget of the general fund to be used towards EMS supplies. This was, as I said, referred from safety, and it did come out of the committee as well. The last piece of legislation, or request for legislation, was a letter from Dennis Weaver requesting legislation authorizing the appropriation of $361,000 from the unappropriated item of the sewer fund to the capital budget of the sewer fund. Funds are available through an OPWC grant and a WPCLF loan. This appropriation is necessary for the wastewater treatment plant improvements, phases 3B and 3C project awarded to CT Consultants through ordinance number 77-2021. Emergency wording is requested to facilitate timeliness in keeping the project moving forward. This was referred to our committee from utilities. Mrs. DeBevick asked if we have been invoiced for this, and Mr. Weaver replied that this appropriation just places the money in a line item in the budget for payments or to receive deposits from the loans. We had no miscellaneous discussion tonight. We adjourned at 7:30 PM, and with that, I will pass.
Okay, thank you very much. That concludes our committee reports. Next up is the mayor.
Thank you, sir. Well, a very busy month August was, working on infrastructure, grant programs, economic development, and many other important issues that we've been tackling. I do want to thank everyone who attended or participated in this weekend's Labor Day events. It was a great turnout. I got a lot of great feedback from residents and vendors and those visiting the events. Really something that the community and its members needed in a time like now, especially what we've gone through over the last year and a half. And just a great turnout. Had more people in previous years, I've seen that, but it was definitely a great turnout. So, and the weather participated as well. Helping our business community here in town and really making use of the towpath and working with Metro Parks and the Canalway Coalition, we've come up with a signage program for businesses downtown. So there's an application process, but here's an example. Businesses can kind of design their own sign. They can put a QR code on there, so when passerbyers come down the towpath, they can hit the QR code with their phone, and then that can take them, directions to the store or the menu or hours of service or specials or what have you. So we're rolling this out here pretty soon. I've talked to the Rotary and a few others in town, and a lot of great feedback on this. So when you have our little section of towpath is visited almost 600,000 times a year, you want to make sure that you're making use of every tool that you have to bring people downtown. So we'll be rolling that out here very soon. The Barberton Jobs Business Gateway, that continues to grow, getting a lot of good feedback from job seekers and businesses. It's tough out there right now, and it's every industry, every level, blue collar, white collar, entry level, everything. So we're doing what we can to help, and so a lot of good feedback there. End of this month, obviously, is very busy as well. Includes the Walk of Fame ceremony, Tuscany on Tusk, and also the Mum Festival that weekend. So a lot of great events showcasing our community and our gem, which is Lake Anna. So I encourage everyone to participate and get involved. We can't do these things, whether it's Labor Day or the Mum Festival or anything else, without volunteers. Key to what we put together here. So this month's Change for Change will be September 30th at El Jalapenos, benefiting Lake Anna YMCA. Some great programs there, and we work well with the YMCA and looking for some additional programs next year. So stay tuned for that. And then just finally, I'd like to congratulate all the fall sports teams here in town. Kids have, it seems like just a blink of an eye, went from 90-degree humid temperatures to much cooler times. So that puts a toll on a growing body, a youth's body, as they're trying to participate in sports and juggle classes and things of that nature. But also a very hard-fought win this past weekend against St. B with the football team. So it's always nice to get those wins. So I want to congratulate all of the participants in the fall sports here in Barberton. That's awesome.
Thank you, Mayor. Okay, anything from the council? We got hands. Okay, Mrs. DeBevick.
Thank you, Mr. President. I just want to clarify, because I don't think Mr. Heidick totally clarified. So the flowers, I made them, but Councilor Heidick bought them. So he bought them for all of the council members and all department heads. So please take any flowers when you leave, because I'm not carrying anything out of here except my own. That's all.
Thanks. Okay, Mr. Griff?
Yeah. Thank you, Mr. President. I would like to inform the body that last year, when we weren't meeting, we were meeting virtually and at the Y and everywhere else. A former Barberton resident, Curtis Sims, he attended Barberton High School. He graduated in '72. In fact, I remember him as a little boy, him and his brother and his sister. And he was a pilot. He was the first African-American pilot for United Airlines. And he spent 43 years flying and 27 years in the airline industry. But tragically, August 30th, Mr. Sims was killed. His dad called me and told me about it, and I was just devastated. I saw it in the paper, but I was hoping it was somebody else. But anyway, he wanted this proclamation. I got a proclamation through the mayor's office because we couldn't do the regular commendation because we weren't meeting. So now we're going to read this proclamation at his funeral. When it was first read, it was at his retirement party. He retired in 2019. Unfortunately, he loved airplanes, but unfortunately, he loved motorcycles too. And he bought a motorcycle, I guess he lived around Lima or something. He bought a motorcycle, a three-wheeler, trike, you've seen those around. And 2 miles from the dealership, he lost control and tragically lost his life.
Oh.
And they had witnesses that said he wasn't speeding or anything, but they saw him struggling to control it or something. And his father told me that we don't know if it was mechanically or whatever, but they're looking into to it. But unfortunately, we lost Mr. Sims, and he hadn't been retired but a couple years, and so I did have a copy of the proclamation. I'm going to give take it by his dad, and his parents still are alive. They live on the corner of Thornwood and Lockwood, and they've been in Barberton all their lives too. But my thoughts and prayers are with the family, and it's tragic. You fly all over the world and come back on a motorcycle. That's the way life is.
Yes?
And the family will appreciate that at
Yes.
the calling hours, because
Mhm.
Mr. Mullery had passed away before. We can present him with that. Thank God I had talked to him and he was aware of it, and his family. And anybody that went to the calling hours, Mr. Silva put it on an easel, and a lot of people
Right.
there at the home, at the funeral home, got to
Right.
read that, and was very thankful that it was there, so everybody can see it.
Right, right,
So that will be, Mr. Sims' family will be very appreciative of that.
right. Thank you.
Anyone else? Okay, this meeting is adjourned at 7:59.
You got papers to turn in?
I found the grant for the
Turn it in.
Yeah.
Let's get that ball rolling about doing it down there.